It's Tuesday, October 18th, 2011. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, video game journalism. As if you couldn't guess what we have to say.
Let's do this.
By happenstance, I had a very fancy dinner at Benoit last night.
Oh.
Because, our friend Phil and his friend Sarah are going on a world-traveling, wandering tour of basically around the entire world on foot and bike. And they biked to New York from Providence, stayed with us for the weekend, and now are currently en route to Fort Lauderdale, Florida on the same bikes, mostly. But one thing led to another, and basically Sarah had, her cousin or something was the manager of this restaurant called Benoit.
Oh.
And Benoit was a very fancy French place that was very awesome. So I had something I have not had in a long time.
Foie gras?
Beef tartare.
Oh.
Let me tell you, that is one of the most delicious things you can ever have.
It's pretty good. That's not foie gras.
No, it is not foie gras.
It's also not pure sugar.
Thing is, though, we had to pay for our food, obviously. The manager's not going to be like, yeah, free, multi-$100 dinner. But
For the guy's cousin, yeah.
But they brought out, we didn't order many appetizers. They brought out, every appetizer.
They were all left over. They would have thrown them out.
No, they made them. They brought out every dessert. And they brought out fancy champagne. But I tested two of my theories. One, like I always say, the cheapest champagne and the most expensive champagne are both the good champagnes, and the expensive champagne was very good. The cheapest wine on the menu is almost always perfectly adequate, if not better, than these slightly more expensive wines on the menu. So, there's all these different wines on the menu. I ordered the $26 bottle, and you know what? It was pretty damn good.
Even if you have a restaurant, are you gonna even have a wine on the menu that's not good? Period.
Usually it's the second.
But
why
would you even have a bad one? Why not have all good ones?
Well, what if
and then just psychologically price them so that the one you have the most of is the one that's priced to sell?
Well, it depends. If you're a mediocre restaurant, right? The cheapest wine is also probably the worst wine out in the market. So what you do is you just buy the cheapest shit wine and, charge $8 a glass for it.
Okay, I guess.
And be in a tourist town or something where no one will ever come back to your restaurant anyway.
Maybe. I don't know.
I
can't imagine a place would have a bad wine, or that even a winery would make a bad wine.
A place had some really bad, it was just a bad wine. They recommended it, and it was terrible. It wasn't corked, it was just terrible. It was that steak place we went to in Beacon, or in Fishkill.
Uh-huh.
Remember the same place that wouldn't let us leave because we didn't order enough alcohol?
I don't remember that happening.
Really? You don't remember shit.
I remember going there, but I don't remember them not letting us
So we
leave.
brought the whole crew one time there. We had 14 people around this big table, and we had a gigantic dinner, but no one ordered booze, and no one wanted dessert. So once it was apparent that we weren't going to order, booze, they basically never brought us menus for, ever. And the service was the slowest possible, and then they just wouldn't bring the check, and everyone disappeared.
Oh yeah, but it wasn't them not letting us leave. It was them trying to, it wasn't like you can't leave until you buy alcohol.
But it was you can't leave until we bring the check, and even asking for the check, it did not appear.
Yep.
Oh well, we'll never eat there again.
It's highly unlikely. If we were to go there, we would eat at Cafe Maya and
Kaibo.
Chibo.
Yeah, Kaibo.
Chibo, whatever.
Chiba.
Whatever.
Buh.
So
Benoit.
let's just get this on with so I can go home. So check this out.
I'm checking.
Remember that there was the Battle of the Scrolls versus the Elder Scrolls?
Yep,
the
you know
old
what?
man trying to keep you down.
So
your elders.
What amazes me is how blatant this sort of infringement suit was. I mean, it's kind of like if Apple computers went after the Apple farm.
Yeah, it's like they went after Apple Records. There was a battle there.
But that was fine because actually Apple Records had the trademark stuff was very specific.
Anyway, but the point here is that, so remember Notch was like, hey, let's just play Quake to settle this. And they were like, no, we're going to go to court. So he's like, all right, because he had money.
Yep.
That's your big first mistake is not just, suing. You either sue someone who doesn't care like, some company. Or you sue someone who doesn't have any money but does care. You never sue someone who has money and cares because they will fight you. And, of course, Notch won. At least he got an interim injunction, which means he won, but they can appeal.
But that's very important. A lot of people always say that if you they can still appeal it. Appeals aren't really
Appeals aren't what you think they are, right? An appeal isn't do-over. An appeal is something was wrong with the court that I was just in. Not, so it's like, let's say I go to court and I'm guilty. Of course, I'm not a lawyer, so some lawyers probably going to tell me I'm wrong.
I'm also not a lawyer. Nuri's probably just
whatever.
But
from what I understand, right, let's say I go to court and I'm a murderer and I get found guilty. If I want to appeal, I can't just be like, no, seriously, I wasn't guilty. You have to be like...
You could be like, the Constitution protects murder as a right.
No, you have
You can argue that. That the original law was unconstitutional.
No, but when you appeal...
Or you could argue that the process in the court was wrong, like technicality.
When you appeal, that's what you have to do, is you have to say, like, look... That court that I was just in, they chose the jurors wrong, and that's why we have to do it again.
Yep, the jury, they let the jury see me handcuffed, which gave them a preconceived notion that I was guilty.
You need some reason to show that there was something wrong with the court that you were just in, and that's why you need a do-over. You can't get a do-over just because you didn't like the result. But lawyers are very good, and they always find a reason to appeal if they need one, or if you want to pay for the appeal, they'll find a way to do it.
But we always say, we want people who are awesome, who do awesome stuff, when confronted with lawsuits like this, to fight. And Notch, you have my seal of approval for being one of the people who does that.
Yep, because he has the monies.
Yeah, and he cares.
He does.
It's such like a blatant
The thing
attempt.
I don't understand is why do they even care about some other guy making a game called Scrolls when their game isn't even called Elder Scrolls. It's called something, 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 Elder Scrolls number something.
Well, because and I know that colloquially people know it as Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, the Elder Scrolls series.
Yeah, Elder Scrolls.
Right, so why do they even care about someone else making a game called Scrolls? What do they seriously think that is going to happen, is going to hurt them in any way?
If I make a book like Luscious Vixens of the Amazon, is Amazon going to come after me?
Right, it's like Amazon would be retarded if they actually thought that was going to hurt or modify their business or any people's perception of them in any way, shape, or form.
So here's the question then. Why do you think they even bothered with this lawsuit in the first place?
Because... I think that there is a lawyer who works there who needs to do something. Otherwise, what is he there for? There's lawyers that work for companies. And if you're a lawyer that works for a company as opposed to working for a law firm, you need to do something. So if I'm a lawyer who works for, say, Apple, I'm sitting there. No one's suing Apple right now, so I don't need to defend Apple. Well, what should I do? I need to sue somebody. So you got to look and look and look for someone to sue. And usually you find some patent or something and you say, hey, I'm doing work here. Don't fire me. I'm a lawyer who works for you. Keep paying my salary. I'm working. And I found a way to make the company money, which is sue people. Because if you're an employee of a company, you have to find a way to make that company money. That's your job, right? So some guy works for Bethesda ZeniMax, and he needs to find a way. He's a lawyer there, and he needs to find a way to make the money. So he looks for someone to sue. So he sees someone comes out with a game called Scrolls in the gaming news, and he says, aha, maybe we can make a trademark suit, and I can prove my worth. I can win this. I'm going to go for it. And he goes for it.
Another option is that they knew this was kind of a BS lawsuit, but it would generate a lot of buzz. Everyone's talking about it. I don't know, gamers all the time will say something like, oh, due to X, I will now not buy Y game. That is never the truth.
Never.
No one who says that means it.
Nope. Anyway.
It's hard to say. Anyway, so speaking of gamers saying they will never do something again, first I want to talk about a technological issue. This is a kind of a Monday thing, but bear with me here. There is an issue number 44,106.
That's a lot of issues.
For Chromium. The Chrome web browser.
Yep.
So the issue is that they would like the tab bar to be able to be moved under the URL bar.
I don't know why people want that. I've suddenly, Firefox and Chrome both have tabs on top, and I'm kind of just fine with that.
Well, it's weird because I've noticed
You know who's complaining about this? People who use the mouse. And you know what I say? Throw your mouse in the trash. Learn to use the keyboard, baby.
I'm not complaining about it. I think what it is that, and I was this way, you were this way, people who are between the ages of like 15 and 20 are this way if they use Linux. You get this idea that I'm going to customize my computer 100%. I'm going to use like FVWM or whatever. I'm going to make like this super awesome my personal interface.
And I learned that was a dumbass idea because you waste all your time customizing your computer. And so let's say that I can say, let's say it is more efficient, even though it's not. But let's say it is, that moving the tabs to the bottom makes me like a half a microsecond more efficient. The amount of time it takes for me to check that setting box, in order for me to break even on time savings and that efficiency, I would have to like use the tab bar like 10 billion times for it to add up, to be a break even on the efficiency. And you know what? I'm very likely in that time period to have to install Chrome again and change the setting again, thus ruining the efficiency. So
Yep. I mean, it's very analogous to the whole Dvorak situation. One, there's no evidence that the Dvorak keyboard is in any way better at all.
There is only anecdotal evidence that it is more comfortable because you have to move your fingers less distance because the more commonly used keys are closer to the home
so
row.
we've got
that's about it.
We've got vague anecdotal evidence.
Yes.
But I would argue that even if it were slightly better from all those perspectives, the inconvenience and loss of productivity when you have to use any other fucking computer in the world more than outweighs the benefits of Dvorak. So there's no reason to ever use Dvorak unless you're an idiot.
Do you know what? There are dumbasses who use Dvorak layout on, say, iPhones and other touchscreen devices. And you can. I checked the iPhone. You can do it. But it's like, why? There's just no point at that point.
So this bug was entered. Comment number 1. I think this bug should be rejected as design intent. Comment number 2. I think this bug should be given high priority as a design deficiency. The shitstorm that ensued is amazing. And there was a comment near the end of this thing that I'm reading right now. Quote, I see a fork in this product's future.
Yeah.
Chrome devs, there are 100+ users here overruling your UI designers. Give them the option. Now. Before we talk about that comment, I want to talk about another gaming-related thing. So CounterStrike Source, a fairly venerable game, a game that is kind of like, it is completely mature. It's the second most popular FPS on the internet, sometimes the third most popular right now. Numbers 1 and 2 being Team Fortress 2 and Counter-Strike 1.6. And for the first time in a long time, there was an update. And it wasn't just bugs. Valve changed some shit in Counter-Strike.
Okay.
Quote, they reduced the standing and moving accuracy for pistols.
That's good because a lot of people just fucking headshot the pistols, too easily. It should be much harder.
Well, it means now you have to get into a position, duck and shoot, or stop running to shoot. Decreased accuracy while moving with sniper rifles.
That's also good because a lot of people just freaking shoot from the hip and blow you right away, and it's too easy to do that. And I would do it all the time. And it's probably not a good idea.
And they fixed a bug that has been a long-standing bug where you could use weapon switch cycles to fire the AWP more often than you otherwise would be able to do.
People were probably using that on me. That's why I couldn't win the gun game. That's how come I couldn't get out of round 1 is because people were reloading their AWPs too fast in that first round.
It's very telling that I've been playing Counter-Strike.
And I didn't know that trick.
We've both been playing Counter-Strike since like beta 5.
Because I don't do tricks like that. I just play straight up.
I didn't even know that trick existed.
Me either. Other people try that shit. That's why we get owned.
And they did. Well, I don't get owned.
I get owned in gun game in the first round
it
when the
depends.
AWPs are out.
I'm okay with the AWP. I think your problem is you don't snipe enough, so you're not that good at it. Once you get past the AWP, you're fine.
Yeah, I am.
Until you hit the scout.
There have been a few times where I got out of the AWP round very easily, but that, like right away. But it's usually when someone's not looking at me and I'm hiding in a good spot. And I just go, bam.
Yeah, you know what I would do? Jump out into the middle, just firing wildly from the hip.
Yeah, I've tried that too. It works sometimes. I usually do that better with the auto snipers.
So the Steam forum, because there was a problem with this rollout.
The thing is, this has been going on since the year 2000 when in Counter-Strike, the Counter-Strike forums would be like, remove AWP from the game, remove P90 from the game.
Granted, when the P90 was introduced, it might as well have been called the automatic death machine.
The P90, as in my hands, is still the automatic death machine. As long as it's not a map that's wide open, if it has even one hallway where people are close in, the P90 is automatic death machine.
But it was automatic death machine across the map. When
I don't think in
any
gun game I've ever played, I've had the P90 for more than 30 seconds.
But anyway, I won't go through the details of the Steam forum thread, but this update broke CounterStrike. You could not play it. Now,
that's not good.
And the forum had all these dubious suggestions. Now, me being smart, I just looked, figured out it was probably a problem with the download, cleared the cache. You know, CounterStrike
you clear the game
files.
cache and you run the validate game file
Yep,
thing in
and
Steam.
that fixed it. I started playing.
Okay.
One, I can tell that the majority of players could not figure that out right away.
Well,
because
it is a little hidden option, but if you're a Steam gamer, you need to know that option's there because you're going to need to use it at least once.
So in the forum, someone suggested that, and someone else said "LOL troll" in response to that.
Dude, no, it's a real thing.
Now, maybe that was a very clever meta troll.
Maybe.
Causing people to doubt the legitimate non-troll.
Maybe.
You know, someone's like, how do I reboot my computer? And someone's like, hit Control-Alt-Delete twice. And the guy's like, LOL troll. So in that thread, it devolved into, this is going to drive everyone back to 1.6. Valve, those fuckers, they have no idea how to design games. Why would they get rid of that AWP exploit? Oh my god, you fuckers, you ruined my game for me. I will never buy another Steam game ever. I'm uninstalling Steam.
Yeah, bullshit.
Yeah, right, kid.
You care enough to post in the forums, you're never going to uninstall Steam. You're going to uninstall it and go, oh shit, install it again.
Yep. Now, these two issues with Chromium and CounterStrike are the exact same issue, and they dovetail into what happened to Team Fortress 2. Not Team Fortress 2, Tribes 2. Don't listen to anyone who plays your game. They're not as good at UI design as you, most likely. Just do what you think is best. And to kind of like illustrate that, I have a new job. I'm the vice president of product management for a company, and I design software interfaces. It's one of the things I do. We had software that has an interface with a whole bunch of like tabs in it. Like there's these different views of different functionality, tabs built in. Originally, the interface was very open. You could drag these tabs and these panels around arbitrarily, customize it exactly as you want, pull tabs out of the window, put them on different monitors, save like this layout for your particular user, all this craziness. And what I found when I was watching people use this interface, which I did not design, by the way, it was designed before I got there, was that the average person would accidentally drag a tab somewhere and never find it again. I made everybody happy by removing all of that functionality.
Yep.
Anyway, these are all just things to think about when you complain about games, when you suggest changes to games, when you whine, and when you design interfaces.
You don't know better than the people who do it for real, right? And this is part of Apple's success. While Apple gets many things wrong with their closedness and such, right? But then again, am I just the guy complaining? But anyway, that has nothing to do with their design, right? Is they just hand down the design. They never do any focus groups or anything. They just design it and say, this is it. This is what we think is great. This is what you get. No changing. And like it or not. Like it or leave it.
Ooh, I feel like we could do a shark. I almost want to go back, you and me, and we should play CS 1.6 and then CS Swords, like back and forth a couple times. And then I don't remember what CS 1.6 is like.
I kind of remember it, but I haven't played it in
I
a
remember
while.
the visual feel, but it's been so long.
It's
I
a
wonder,
lot faster and slipperier.
I don't think it's actually faster, and I think
It's
I think
slipperier.
Source is slipperier.
Oh, what the?
That's what I'm saying.
just
I
going
wanna
based
play it
on
again.
memory.
I want to go shoot the poop too.
Shooting the poop is key.
But anyway, things of the day. So if you've got some fuck, we all have some fuck laying around. What do you do with it? Well, maybe if you've got some shit and you put it down in a glass bowl and put some fuck on it, you'll have a fuck shit stack. And that is the topic of this song, which surprisingly our friend Conrad had never heard. And it's the kind of thing I would have expected him to hear. So I wonder if any of you have not heard it. The song is Fuck Shit Stack. And I don't know if I want to say anything else about it other than that it is by the, I almost said late and great, he's not dead, Reggie Watts.
All right. So this was all over the internet. It's on College Humor now, but I saw it before it was on College Humor, so this does not count
Scott,
as a College Humor thing of the day.
falling down on the College Humor thing of the day.
Yes, sure, whatever. So this dude does this little science project where he takes a superconductor and some magnets and liquid nitrogen, and he freezes that superconductor so cold that it has a scientific phenomenon that I forget the name of called something locking or whatever. But basically, I don't really understand what's going on here. I tried to read it, and I was like, I don't get it. But basically, the magnetic fields get frozen or some shit, and it hovers. You can make things hover in the air if they're really cold superconductors of a certain type. There's like 2 types of superconductors. It has to be a certain type of superconductor, and it has to be really cold, and it has to have magnets, and then it can hover. But we can't actually develop any sort of floating cars or anything because they would have to be really cold and made of giant superconductors with giant magnets in the street and liquid nitrogen all over the fuck. And it wouldn't work.
All right.
Yeah.
This thing of the day caused me to read over lunch the Wikipedia articles on pretty much everything related to superconductivity.
Can you explain this to me then?
And I forgot the majority of it. It has to do with the fact that there are 2 kinds of superconductors.
Yeah,
there may be
I
more.
figured out that part.
One is permeable to magnetic fields and one is not.
All right.
So as a result, anyway, in the meta moment,
it's real science. It's not bullshit, though.
in the meta moment, we were at the New York Comic Con as press. We will have a review of it whenever we have time. I am going to Japan with Emily for 2 weeks starting next week, so the schedule for Geeknights might be a little wonky.
We only need 4 shows in the can.
The next conventions we will be at will be
Magfest!
Burning Apocalypse Con.
Oh, yeah, that one.
On 11/11/11/11/12/11 and 11/13/11. I got carried away with my 11s.
Yep.
It's all the way up.
Yep.
And then we will be at Magfest.
Yep.
Magfest.
What?
We are guests as we were last year. I imagine that we will go to Magfest forever, much like the Penny Arcade Expo forever.
As long as it exists and doesn't fall apart like Katsucon.
Yep.
So also, the book club selection is a double book club.
Oh my God, all the way.
One very tiny book, The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, which I assume I'm pronouncing correctly because no French people have yet to complain.
There aren't French people.
And also another book by him that takes more than 20 minutes to read, which is The Wind, Sand, and Stars. Also by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry.
I will point out, not to advocate piracy, but I have a Kindle I just bought, and I wanted to get an ebook of the latter. The former has pictures, so don't
Well,
ebook
you're going to have
it.
2 long plane rides to read.
And there is no official ebook. If you Google for that book, you will find a PDF right away.
I found physical books all over the place.
I know, but I wanted an ebook.
Oh.
And I'm saying if you Google for the name of that book and the word ebook, you will find a PDF.
Well, I don't care if you buy the book. I just care if you read it. That's what book club's about, reading.
Uh-huh.
Read a book. Also, visit us on the internet, facebook.com/frontrowcrew, twitter.com/geeknights, frontrowcrew.com, and such.
And if you want us to appear at a convention, at a school, at an event, any of the things that you guys like us to come to, pretty much everyone I ran into at the New York Comic Con said something to the effect of, so when is your show? To which I said, oh, we're not doing one. So if you want us to appear at anything, don't contact us. That will get you nowhere. Contact the thing you want us to be at. Now, if you run the thing and have the actual authority to invite us, as opposed to, yeah, I'm a volunteer for the screenings department of a convention, I will ask them to bring you, then we'll talk. But otherwise, tell the event itself to invite us. And as long as they're not dickbags, there's a good chance we'll come.
If, they're not a million miles away and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it depends.
Right.
All right.
So we did do a show a long time ago.
In 2007.
About reviews in general. Not about game reviews specifically, but about reviews. And I'm sure there was much talk of game reviews in that show, however. But we really haven't done a show about specifically video game journalism, which is a long-standing hot topic in the video game world, especially because, people like to be meta, and all your video game talk comes from video game journalists who talk about themselves. And because it's a relatively new field of journalism compared to other fields of journalism, such as political journalism, there's a lot of, questions and uncertainties, and because a lot of the people in the field are not professional journalists. I mean, they do journalism as their professional job, but they weren't necessarily trained in journalism, that thoroughly. There's a lot of, sort of murky areas, and it's not the same. Reporting on video games is not the same as reporting on governments or other things. So, there's often much talk about many things in this department that are very controversial, like people getting paid for better review scores.
Yep, there was just a story
general.
today about how Dutch newspapers were being pressured by EA. They basically, if you wanted a review copy of the game, you had to fill out a survey. And the survey was like, do you like the game? What do you think of our primary competition?
All right, so let's cover that to begin with, right? So, the fundamental problem here is that any video game journalism that exists, right, is usually on its own. It's not like in a newspaper. That's pretty rare, right? So it sometimes exists in a newspaper, but usually it's in a video game website or a video game magazine.
It's on like IGN or Kotaku.
And all the advertisers, or the vast majority of them, are video games. And they don't want to, if they lose those video game advertisers, they're out of business,
Wait
they're
a minute,
out of
Scott,
jobs.
are you implying that there's a perverse incentive in the journalism of video games due to the fact that it's kind of this...
Right? So look at the New York Times, right? The New York Times doesn't really have political advertising in it, right?
Now, it may, but that's not its only source of advertising. There's going to be
its main source of advertising is Macy's and shit like that.
Yes, and even then, because, being a respected source of journalism means that if you have an advertiser, say Macy's, and Macy's was like murdering babies, you would cover that.
Yeah, you would still say that Macy's is murdering babies. You wouldn't give a shit.
You'd better.
Right? But, because video game, magazines, they're not, these places don't make that much money. They're not that stable. And also the people there are, sure, there's plenty of highly people with lots of integrity there. And
people with lots of integrity.
I meant it to say high integrity people, but I got it backwards.
It happens. Well, think of it. Even if, an individual journalist may say, I am not influenced by that factor, which they may believe. But how many studies show that if doctors are given perks from a drug company, they start prescribing that drug more, even if they don't actually believe that they were influenced by the gifts?
Exactly.
And
it's a psychological fact, whether you acknowledge it or not. If someone gives you free shit, even it's like in Prince of Nothing, he sent you. What? No. Have you ever talked to him? Well, yeah. He sent you. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
So even if they say they're not, and even if they believe they're not, it looks bad. Kind of like how if you look at any major company, they'll have rules about like business integrity or conflict of interest. And usually the rules aren't like, you can't have a conflict of interest. They are, you cannot have one, nor can you have something that would appear to be one. Mm-hmm. This definitely appears to be one.
Well, yeah, and the thing is that the people, while even individual journalists might care, the people running, say, Video Game Magazine, at least I can't speak for all the magazines, but there are clearly some, and also websites, they don't give a shit. They're just like, all right, whatever. I don't care about, the integrity of our magazine or whatever. Let's just, you want to pay us money? Sure. This is a money-making business. I just want to make money. I don't care.
Now, we can couple this with the fact that the video game industry, especially the major players, EA, are like petulant babies when it comes to reviews.
Yeah, this is another thing I don't understand, right? So on the one hand, you've got this problem of the reviewers giving people better scores if they pay more money and less scores if they pay less money. Okay, whatever. Why the fuck do these companies actually think their review scores are important? Like this,
I think they have numbers showing that review scores correlate directly to sales, and I wouldn't be surprised if that were true.
It's possible, but I highly doubt that it's the cause and effect is in that direction, right? If I put out a piece of shit game tomorrow, are you going to seriously tell me that piece of shit game, if it gets all 5s from some video game magazine, is going to sell like crazy? Or, perfect scores? It's not. Games sell more when they have more marketing, when they're more out there. And if they're more out there and they have better marketing, the marketing, even if you didn't directly pay and be corrupt, if you have tons of ads for your game all over the place and it's like this hot explosive game, it's going to change how people perceive it regardless of the content of the game itself. Like look at that Firefall thing, right? At PAX. You know, it's
Oh
like
my
it was
God.
advertised all over the fuck.
When you hire a guy to drive in a circle for 3 days around a convention with a billboard on his truck,
Right. And the thing is, even if the game doesn't get the best scores, right, the fact is that because they spent so much on marketing, every game magazine reviewing place is going to review that game because it was advertised so much. You know, and because every place reviewed it, that you're actually, even if you gave it a bad score, you're still giving more space, more face time to that game for the customers, and it's going to sell more copies.
now I will bet a place where reviews like that, especially scores, matter heavily. But then again, they're usually outsourced and not done by, quote unquote professional journalists, are app stores like the iPhone, Game Store, Droid, whatever.
Yeah, those customer reviews.
There are-
I actually personally trust Amazon reviews kind of probably too much.
Yeah.
Newegg ones also.
But especially when it comes to video games, there's so much shitware. It's not even like crapware, it's just shitware on the iPhone and Android that unless someone I know and trust said, try this game, there is no game I will try, especially because they're not free, nor are there demos most of the time.
Yep.
So as a result, if I do want to try a game and I want to look for something like random, the only way to look, short of finding someone else recommending something, which again is a sea of shit, is to go by the reviews in the system. What are the top rated or most downloaded games?
And they're usually crap.
Yeah, they are.
You don't want those.
That's a separate problem.
Right.
So, what are the things people always complain about? People who hate on video game journalism, because I don't want this to be just us hating on it, because
Well, I can tell you there's really only one thing I personally hate about game journalism, because you know what? I don't look at scores, so I don't care if they're, I don't really read reviews either, so I really don't give a shit about if they're corrupt or not. The one thing that bothers me most about game journalism is game journalists who don't know anything about games, right? It's like your only job, or at least your major job here, is to write about games. You should know more about games than me. My job is computer science and writing computer programs. I just play games. That's like if, when I listen to, say, sportscasts, right, or watch sports TV shows or Sports Center, those people always know more about sports than I do, right? I just watch sports. I don't, I know as much as I know, which is probably more than,
yeah, your job is not to watch sports and talk about it.
These guys always know a fuck ton more than me. They say names of people, and then I go look up who those people were, because I didn't know who they were. Like Rod Laver. I didn't know who Rod Laver was. Rod Laver's the best tennis player to ever exist.
Well, look it up.
I didn't know who he was, but then I listened to a sportscast and I learned something. When I read game journalism, I've rarely, if ever, learned anything from any article in any game magazine or game website ever, except for when they're about things that are like Japanese, which is why I didn't know about them, which is why I tend to like Kotaku better, because they actually have Japanese correspondent. Ashcraft is over there digging up the Japanese dirts that I don't see in the U.S. But it's like they don't teach me anything because I know more than them, which means they don't know enough, because even though I know a lot, there is a lot more to know than I know. So it's like if I know more than you, you're not qualified for this job, and I haven't really found anyone who is qualified. And it's not.
There are a few out there, people who wear the journalist hat and who simultaneously play games or design games. But that's it. They also design and play games and thus know, but they're not the kind of prominent game journalists usually.
Yeah, the big name game journalists are usually really good at writing. People like Ngai Kroll or Steven Totillo, right? And I've met
their writing styles.
They're
actually,
writing.
I
They're
really
great.
like.
They're great at writing. I've met them in person at PAX for like a minute or two.
They're great guys.
They're good. They're good guys. But the fact is, Ngai Kroll started gaming when the PlayStation 1 came out. He's probably gone back and played some classics, but he doesn't know. He doesn't have that incredibly deep knowledge of the history of gaming and all sorts of crazy shit. And Steven Totillo never played Doom until relatively recently. He wrote a big thing on Kotaku about how he tried to play Doom and he couldn't get it to work and all this stuff. And I'm like, how can you be like this preeminent game review journalist guy if you've never played Doom? You couldn't even be a movie critic for the town newspaper if you have never seen Citizen Kane. Dude never played Doom, but he's like top game journalist.
Meanwhile,
that's bullshit.
Mike and Jerry, Gabe and Tycho, Penny Arcade, they basically spend their lives, other than family and eating and sleeping and all that, making a comic, running conventions, and playing video games. And their, reviews of games they play are actually usually very spot on because they do know a lot about games. They
know a lot, but they're not. They still don't know as much as me. But they know in different areas.
Is that a challenge?
Yeah, I mean they're not. It's like they know. They go back.
Scott, what year was Doom published? Vaguely.
Doom 1?
Doom 1.
1991? 2?
1991 or 1992, you're saying?
Yes. 3.
1993, close.
I was close.
You were close.
It's close.
But anyway, you didn't know.
I'm not good at years.
Yeah, I'll give you
that's
that.
trivia. That's
I'll give you that.
That's not knowledge of gamery. That's knowledge of you.
But the thing is, Scott, they have a
and
pretty deep knowledge, and their reviews are very good. My only complaint with their game journalism is that they review all games from their perspective, being two people whose lives center around playing games and don't have a lot of other responsibilities. So they will love a game that I can play and say, wow, I would love this if I had 20 hours a day to play video games.
Yeah. That's another thing is that, when people review a game, at least the vast majority of reviews I've read, right, it pretty much comes down to the same kind of reviews that punk kids write in forums on the internet or on their blogs, which is, I like this game because XYZ, right? Or, they'll judge games because, it wasn't innovative, or it didn't do anything new, or they'll actually care about the graphics, or, actually, it's like, do those things matter? It's, are you actually judging whether it's a good game or not? And they kind of are, kind of aren't.
Well, here's the thing. It's
like there isn't, this sort of formula of here's the things you have
Scott,
to evaluate and how to evaluate
what I was
them.
getting at with what people complain about. People love to hate on video game journalism, but their complaints are often kind of dumb or invalid. Like they'll say, video game journalism isn't objective. I want objective reviews only.
Well, there's no such thing as objective review, first of all.
Well,
unless you had some
if it
sort
was
of
simply a list of facts about the game and unaltered screenshots of the game.
Yeah, and if we had a list of criteria by which to judge all games.
Like graphics, maybe we count the maximum number of colors on the screen at any one time throughout the whole game, and we have a metric based on that. Colorability or colorfulness.
Yeah.
Then we could say this game is more colorful than this game.
Great.
By these criteria.
Sure.
The other side that people complain about is they get mad when someone reviews a game and gives it a score. Like, people get really mad. Like, so it's like the hip thing to say, oh, fucking scoring games. That's like the bullshit way to review things. Scores are not inherently bad. I just think they're often used very poorly, and the categories are very ill-defined. I mean, I've just found this random IGN review of Super Mario 3 on the Wii.
Okay.
It was broken out into 5 numbers. Presentation, graphics.
How is presentation different from graphics?
Sound.
Okay.
Gameplay. Lasting appeal.
Mm-hmm.
So gameplay is 1/5 of the metric.
But that should be 90% of the score.
And yet lasting appeal is separate from gameplay.
It's like if it has good gameplay, then it also necessarily has lasting appeal. Kind of, right? I mean...
All right, well, let's go through. All right, presentation. It gets a 9.0.
Well, is this Mario 3, as in Super Mario 3?
Yes.
Raccoon Tail, yellow?
Yes, but on the Wii.
So the virtual console version?
Yes.
Okay.
So 9.0 is the presentation.
Out of 10?
And yeah, out of 10. And it has some text here. Quote, Mario's world was greatly expanded through Super Mario Bros. 3. The adventure is more epic and several new lands and enemies to encounter. Fantastic.
Okay.
So what separates it from a 9.1?
Yeah.
What did it need to go up or down 1 point?
I don't know. Do they even do 0.1?
Here's what bothers me. Graphics.
Or do they just do whole numbers?
No, they don't just do whole numbers.
Can it possibly be 9.1?
Graphics, 8.0. Some of the best 8-bit work ever done, yet an 8.0.
Okay.
Seeing Mario encounter the oversized enemies of Giant Land still impresses me to this day. How come that's an 8 if it impresses you to this day and it's some of the best 8-bit work ever done?
Yeah, what?
What's a 9? And also, is this an objective scale normalized to modern games? Like, wouldn't Mario 3 be a 2.0 compared to, like, Crysis?
That is something that happens a lot, right? Is that people judge, and it's sort of you have to judge something.
Oh, I agree.
By the time it comes out, right? Like if I take, say, I don't know, a relatively mediocre movie.
No, not even
from
by the
today.
time. Not even by the time it comes out. You rate it more by how well it achieves its purpose with just an understanding of the limitations of the time.
But also understanding not just the technologies of the time, but the other art of the time, right?
But at the same time, the counter argument is that a movie that is amazingly made from the 20s, but is just like visually difficult to follow because of the camera problems that they had, is objectively worse in that regard. Had it been made with modern equipment, it would have been a better movie.
True, but I'm talking about saying, I could take something from today. I could take a crappy video game that just came out today, and I could bring it back to you in 1986, and it would be the greatest game of all time, even though it's crappy today, because compared to other things that came out today, it's not so good. A lot of times what you'll see is a game will come out that'll be a huge hit, and you'll see a sequel come out that will streamline the original and be much better. But compared to other games that have come out since in that interim period, the sequel isn't better than some other game that came out the same week.
Well, like case in point.
But it's better than the game that came before it. So it's an improvement, but it doesn't beat other games at that time. So even though it's a better game, it actually gets a worse score than the original game, even though it's better than the original game, because it's worse than some other game that is also out at that time. So for example, Half-Life 2 might be better than Half-Life 1. But Half-Life 1 came out in, 97, 98? Something like that, 96? And Half-Life 1 was better than all the other FPSs at that time that it was released. But maybe Half-Life 2, it was still better than all the other... But I'm saying, pretend...
Yeah, so I guess it means you have to define your terms
Pretend
better.
there was a Quake 7 that came out at the same time as Half-Life 2. And even though Half-Life 2 was a million times better than Half-Life 1, Quake 7 was a million times better than Half-Life 2, came out at the same time as Half-Life 2. Therefore, Half-Life 2 ends up with a worse score than Half-Life 1, even though it's better than Half-Life 1.
So maybe one way to go around this is if you have a graphics score from 1 to 10, you need to say what a 10 is and what a 1 is.
Exactly.
But then you get in the situation where something exceeds in either direction. And then what you do is rebalance the scale with that being the new 1.
Yep.
And squeeze everything else in. Change everything else's numbers. Like this game redefined what worst game means to our journalistic outlet.
Yeah, what I would do if I had some sort of reviewing site is I would just have a chart. And the first game I ever reviewed would be number 1. And the second game I ever reviewed would either be number 1 or number 2. And if it was 1, the former number 1 would get pushed down to 2. And I would just rank everything.
But based on what
ever.
criteria? Because this, overall, Mario 3 gets a 9.5 on this. But what does overall mean? I mean, Mario 3 is a better overall game in what sense compared to some other type of game?
The ranking should pretty much be worth spending your time on, assuming you haven't
Super
already...
Meat Boy, great game, but not for some people.
Yeah.
So what do you do with games that are for an audience? They're a 10 for that guy, but they're a 1 for me personally.
That's just how it is.
Yeah, so what do you do? Because the reviews I like...
You read the fucking text.
And the reviews I strive for when I do review things are to be able to say, on a kind of semi-objective artistic standpoint, I feel like this is a reasonable, neutral review as to the qualities of a thing. Independently, here's who I think it is good for, here's who I think it is bad for. To be able to say, I personally think this game is shit, but if you like this kind of stuff, this game is awesome.
Well, it's pretty much like, look at the game of Go, right? The board game.
I don't like Go. But
I don't like Go.
One of the most important games
like
of all time.
Playing Go, but Go mathematically and in every other fashion is amazing. I just personally can't stand playing it. I don't want to spend any time on it. But it's amazing and great in every possible way. And if you might be the kind of person who will spend your entire life studying it, reading all the Go books, studying the patterns, and good for you. But I'm not that guy. Super Meat Boy. Well, if you have no skills and no fingers, probably shouldn't play Super Meat Boy. But if you have skills and fingers, get that shit.
No, and you're highly tolerant to frustration.
But not quite as much frustration is necessary as in games like I Want to Be the Guy.
Or Ninja Gaiden.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
Yeah. I'm kind of feeling, this is kind of an aside, maybe just because I've watched a whole bunch of Retro Game Master, but I kind of want to play one of those fuck you games.
Play the incredibly hard ones like Cat Mario or the Flash game.
No, because Cat Mario is just memorizing. I don't want that.
I don't know. I like the one. I think you should just play the modern impossible ones, like the Flash games that are just like, spikes out of nowhere, this thing, it's like
I think because some games are like I think I might start with God Hand, which I didn't actually play.
I don't think God Hand's that kind of game. I don't know.
Not that see, you're thinking of that kind of game in terms of the fuck you impossible Nintendo hard style. I'm just thinking in terms of a game that's gonna piss me off to no end, but I will not let defeat me because I haven't done that in a long time. I tend to let games defeat me. If a game if I sat down today, having never played Zelda 2 before and was gonna play it, I would get to the hammer part and be like, yeah, fuck this, and just go on to CounterStrike.
I could do it.
I could, but I don't know if I would put the effort into a game of that difficulty.
It all depends, giving up on games, I guess it's sort of a separate show, but it all depends on the reason that the game is fucking me, right? It's like, if it's fucking me because I just can't make it, like Super Meat Boy, then I'm going to keep going for it. But if it's a game where, the reason I can't make it is because some bullshit, then I will give up on it because the game is broken, not me. If I'm broken, I'll fix me. If the game's broken, fuck it. I got other shit to do.
So, Scott, what do we do about game journalism?
I think number one, things we can do. As gamers, fucking ignore the goddamn scores. They're stupid. And and make it known that you don't give a shit about the scores either. Right? And it's even worse is that Metacritic site that averages all the scores together, and then Steam puts the scores in Steam. It's like, oh, come on, really? It's like, get rid of the fucking scores. Just get them out of here. You don't see, movies, it's like thumbs up, thumbs down, and 5 stars. But it's like game scores are all over the fucking place. It's ridiculous. Also, if you are going to keep the scores, because I know we're not going to actually get rid of them, right? There's that 10-point problem where everything gets between a 5 and a 7, right? 5 stars is the optimal number to rate anything, and don't use any fractions.
I would argue that a 5-star system has one flaw in that you can always go for the third middle star. There is an argument to be made that when you're reviewing anything, you should force the review to be slightly good or slightly bad.
Yeah.
Because it prevents laziness. Then you need a 4-star system.
Well, you can, the thing is, you can, 4-star system's not bad either. But I guess...
I'm just saying there's an argument to be made there.
Yeah, I guess.
I found, using... to go into enterprisey land, doing ticketing systems and everything, I would originally use 5 levels of severity. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, critical at the top, trivial at the bottom, something like that. And things tended to always either be critical or the middle.
3, yep. Just like video game reviews is 5, 7, 10.
That's the other thing with
or
grade.
5, 7, 9, because you don't want to give it a 10.
Maybe we need to change the scale because we kind of have grade inflation where, if a game is less than 75% or whatever, that's considered that it's garbage.
Well, a lot of, when you're reviewing the comics, and some other podcasts do the same thing. They do buy, borrow, and ignore.
Steal,
right?
Actively destroy.
Right, so it's your recommendation. I recommend that you go out immediately, pay full price for this game, and, that should be the recommendation list. You're the top possible recommendation is buy this immediately for full price and play the fuck out of it. Right under that is, okay, maybe try to get it at a slight discount and maybe play it a lot, kinda, if you really want to, And then under that, you can have, okay, wait for this to be discounted at, a year from now, or wait for all the DLC to come out, or, give an actual recommendation, get this for free somehow and play it if you like it, or try the demo and, give an actual recommendation.
We go back to an idea of you have a journalistic outlet, however you do it, where every game has 10 recommendations. And each of these recommendations is from a different perspective.
There have been magazines that have done that.
There have been, and I
where
feel
usually one person writes the article, who is and usually the person writing the article is a specialist in that kind of game. The platformer guy reviews the platform game, but then all the a bunch of people, 5 different people, play the game and give it a score and a slight
and we go
blurb.
Based on mechanics. For a platformer, this is how it is. If you for the details of the platformer player, if you're Super Meat Boy, if you love platformers, it's great. If you don't like platformers, it's possibly the worst game you could ever play.
Yep. But yeah, it's if you just had, a specialist in a genre. But then the thing, I hate is that even more enforces the genreification of games, which I hate and I want to see go away.
Yep. Well, that's why you need specialists, because you need the specialist perspective, because there are specialist gamers. You also need the generic, I don't want to say enlightened, but the kind of the mass. I mean, we're even, Scott and I are very guilty of, there are arenas of games that we generally don't like, so we tend not to review them because we tend not to play them that much.
Yep. Also, what do you do when, say, for example, a game has problems that aren't really the fault of the people making the game, right? So what if, for example, some guy made a game for PlayStation and it was great, but the PlayStation Network was down, so it didn't work, or someone made a game, but then everyone started cheating at the game, ruining it, or...
but that's a game design flaw.
Sort of, but you get my idea, right? Like, there's something else outside of the game that is causing it a problem.
You could argue that most of those things outside of the game are still the fault of the game designer.
They are, in some way.
In fact, we gave a lecture to that
Like,
effect.
if you have a shitty community, it's because you made
or
a
your
game...
netcode is bad, you only have one server.
Yeah, but there are still, many things that could happen. Like, what if I put a game out on Steam, and what if Valve fucks up and, the downloading of it is all screwed up, and I have to put out patches or something, but it wasn't my fault. Or I put a game on Apple, and then, they change something on me. There's all sorts of technological and other issues that could happen to a game that would make it bad that aren't your fault. That might give you a negative review otherwise,
Well, I'll do from my perspective. I don't read any game journalism anymore.
What if I make a movie and I put it in the movie theater, and the movie theaters all have shitty projectors and the bulbs are dim, right?
I should have taken that into account. I would have known. If they all have dim bulbs, then you got to account for dim fucking bulbs.
That's the kind of thing that happens, right? So, I made a game, and man, it just doesn't work with this weird-ass video card that I couldn't test, The
one that everyone has? I should have tested it.
No,
or otherwise,
a rare one, but that happens to be the one the reviewer has.
Yeah, usually the reviewer will say, hey, your game didn't fucking work.
Yeah, There's also the fact that, reviewers, even if there's no shady business with advertisers pressuring them or any of that kind of stuff, right? If you get a game for free, because it's a review copy or something, even if it's the same exact game as the final copy, you didn't pay for it. So not paying for it, gives you a completely different mental, thing on the game, right? Like, if I pay for something and I don't play it, I feel bad. Like, you have different feelings about something when you've paid for it than if you've gotten it for free. And that difference in feelings results in the review, even if you really identify with that reviewer and you're very similar in your taste, is going to have a different perspective than you who has to pay $50 for it. And in that way, I sort of feel like video game reviewers should sort of have to pay for the game. If you're a movie reviewer, don't they pay for a movie ticket usually? I don't know.
I don't know either.
I know people do get review copies of books, but the thing is with a book, even though you're not paying for it, there's a significant time investment to read the whole thing. And some games do have the time investment, but some games don't. So I don't know.
Well, I think we've gone on long enough, but for
That's
me personally, and you touched on this earlier, I don't read game journalism, and the only thing that would get me to is if when I read game journalism, I learned something that I would not have just learned on my own.
Yeah, if I'm reading game journalism, it's usually something that is,
Well,
historical, or it's not something that's like a review of a game or something like that.
Or a list of facts, because a list of facts I can get from anywhere, like the game has this, is multiplayer or not. This publisher comes out in this day. That everyone has that.
Right. It's usually something like, hey, check out, this guy. This is a great designer no one ever heard of. He made these games back in the day. Let's interview him. What was it like back in those days? What made you do this? Something educational, something like a documentary.
Now, granted,
almost.
this Super Mario 3 review is that for people who, if you don't know what Mario 3 is, it gives you a lot of info on like what Mario 3 is and kind of why it was important and when it came out. And
oh, that's good.
But at the same time, it's not for me. I know all of it, and it doesn't talk a lot about anything obscure. It's kind of like just a description of what the game is like.
Yep. One more thing I want to add here is that, game reviewers, even though we already talked about doing the thing, we have a bunch of different reviewers who are specialists in different areas or stuff like that, right? We need more reviewers from different demographics, right? the 5-year-old kid reviewing the game, right? You need the 80-year-old lady reviewing the game, right? Because different people are going to have different, from different demographics and different skill levels and different genders and different whatevers are going to have different perspectives on a game, especially different ages, And people generally, most game reviewing people tend to be 20 to 40-year-old dudes. And that's it. And occasionally ladies. And not too many old people and not too many kids, really. And if you're a kid and some 35-year-old dude really thinks this game is awesome, does that mean you're going to think it's awesome as a 12-year-old? Probably not. You probably don't have a lot in common with that guy. He probably thinks Pokemons are really boring. You think Pokemon's the best thing ever.
I find Pokemon really boring nowadays.
Yeah, right? But it would if you played the new Pokemons, if I went back in time and gave 12-year-old Rim the brand new Pokemons.
That would have been the best game ever.
Right, exactly. So you need the 12-year-old to tell the 12-year-old what game is good.
So I guess what we're missing from game journalism that I don't see anywhere, and if anyone can point me at it, maybe I just haven't found it because I've given up on it for so long.
Don't look at it, yeah.
Is Otaku USA, like that level of like insight into video games that we see with them talking about anime.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the kind of reviewing I want that I just don't see for video games.
Yep.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music, Kat Lee for web design, and Brando K for the logos.
Be sure to visit our website at frontrowcrew.com for show notes, discussion, news, and more.
Remember, Geeknights is not one, but 4 different shows. Sci-Tech Mondays, Gaming Tuesdays, Anime Comic Wednesdays, and Indiscriminate Thursdays.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.
Where my gerunds at? Parenthetical. Shit, motherfucker, ass tits, cunt, cock, motherfucker, shit, ass tits, motherfucker, shit, come on. Fickety fuck, fickety fuck, fickety fuck, fickety fuck, 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 fuck. Shit, motherfucker, ass tits, cunt, cock, motherfucker, shit, ass tits, motherfucker, shit, come on. Fickety fuck, fickety fuck, fickety fuck, fickety fuck, 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 fuck. You take some shit.